Welcome back to the Gruber Companies. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner, and this is the Tesla Roadster Roundtable podcast.
Pete, pull your mic closer, please.
All right. Actually, I'm 2 inches from it. Can everybody hear me okay? Today, we have a non-AI generated backdrop. This is actually taken with a cell phone. It's 2 images, and it is using an old trick that I used to do before I wanted to afford a wide-angle lens for my Nikon. In Photoshop is an option called Automate Photo Merge, and it will actually stitch together images for you seamlessly. And so this is a wide-angle shot of our service center. And I was in there yesterday, and I saw like 50 Roadsters plus, and that's just in one building. To the left there, you see all the Roadsters lined up. Those are the ones that are ready to go out, going back to customers that have been repaired, or the majority of them anyway. And then you see some up on lifts. We have 11 lifts there. Roadsters in the back that you can't see because the lifts are kind of covering it, and then Roadsters waiting for repair on the right side along our south wall there. But I thought you might find that interesting. It's a well-run, highly organized, clean shop, and we get a lot of visitors every week, and the first thing they comment is, I have never seen an auto shop that is this clean, this well organized, and this brightly colored with all of these beautiful cars. So we're pretty proud of what we have, and I thought I would use that as a backdrop today.
I think that's a wonderful backdrop, Pete, and I will admit, having been in there, I've seen obviously less cars in there. I've seen it even more stacked with cars than we have in there right now. We move a lot of vehicles through there.
The guys take a lot of pride, too. I think it's one of Elon's philosophies. When he took over that NUMMI plant from Toyota, it was pretty dark and dingy and block walls and, a lousy lighting. First thing he did was he put in a lot of LED lighting, put some skylights in, painted the walls white. And his theory is when you create an environment like that, it raises the bar for everybody. And oftentimes I'll see the guys here in the service center with a mop or picking stuff up and, trying to keep it this pristine looking.
Yeah, it's nice to see that the culture of organization and cleanliness has really taken place, and it only helps us.
Yeah. So it looks like we've got a YouTube question already from Herbert Buder. Herbert is a Roadster owner in Düsseldorf, Germany. He says, "Morning, guys. Herbert calling in from Düsseldorf again. Try to follow your informative Tesla Roadster Roundtable every Wednesday. Have some questions again around the R80 batteries from Tesla. The first question is, the first R80 battery started in 2016, correct? That was at a point in time when the original batteries were still going strong, but the expectation was that Tesla Roadster batteries, multi-cell 18650 designs, had a 10-year lifespan. So a lot of customers began to anticipate dying Roadsters, and Roadster or Tesla responded with a replacement battery pack.
That's correct.
The story is that they went to Panasonic Sanyo and attempted to place an order for the same type of 18650 cells, and were basically turned off by a really high minimum order quantity that they couldn't meet. So they shopped a bit, and they ended up going to a Korean battery manufacturer, LG, and they supplied those 18650 cells. There was a difference, though. The original cells were 2.2 amp hour. These improved cells were 3.2 amp hour.
Right.
And everything looked fine for about 7 years or so. And then we began to see problems with those. Now, let me finish. Let's finish the question, and then we can go into what we found. So the 2016 cells, he says, had fast degradation according to social media. How has that improved over the years, and what is the quality currently on the R80 packs produced by Tesla? Well, actually, Mark was part of the engineering team that dived into problems that we were beginning to see surface with Tesla Roadsters that had the 2016 replacement pack. Maybe you can elaborate a bit.
Yeah, when we were looking into that, as part of our research, we were looking at the performance of the driving, The symptoms that were exhibited were not so much that the battery would not take a charge and would not fully charge, but rather that the battery seemed to be giving a false sense that it was fully charged. And when you tried to accelerate, it simply had no performance.
Mm-hmm.
Upon researching, we found that there is a possibility that a battery that was had a poorer quality manufacture, in this case, possibly less electrolyte in the battery, could cause the battery itself, the individual cells, to have high impedance.
Right.
And impedance essentially is the result of impedance, or the symptom of high impedance was exactly what we were seeing. The battery would report that it was charging fully, that it would hold a charge, but when it was put under stress, the voltage in the battery would suddenly drop. And the result of a sudden drop in battery voltage from a Roadster standpoint is that it would go to power limiting, and so you would not get the kind of amperage that you needed to actually make the motor go.
And we actually had 2 Roadsters that came into the service center. And one of them was a local Phoenix Roadster here. And the customer said, it's subtle, but I just don't think my Roadster has the power that it used to have. And, Roadsters will snap you back in the seat when you punch it. There's also, on the 1.5 Roadsters, there's a KW, there's a gauge. And most Roadsters, when you floor them, will go down into the 200 kW usage scale, whereas these Roadsters that were exhibiting problems wouldn't go that deep. They would go maybe 70, maybe 120 or so kW, and then top out there. There were also other symptoms that the Roadsters were describing: squishy accelerator pedal feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And driving the cars, as you began to accelerate and then floor it, there would be a delay before it would eventually begin to take off. Some of the Roadsters were so bad. There was a customer in California that lived in the hills, and he couldn't make it. He couldn't make it to his house anymore. It was the power was that low. The vehicles that we had here, and we had 2 of them, one in Tucson and one in Phoenix, when you did a freeway blast to try to get on the freeway, it was behaving like an ICE car. So anyway, we did a lot of digging, a lot of diagnostics, a lot of analysis, and at that, we were initially not sure, is the problem in the electronics? Is it in the PEM? Is it in the inverter? Is it in the motor? Or is it in the battery?
Right, and what we had found is that the once you would hit that accelerator pedal hard, on a normal Roadster, hitting that accelerator hard would produce as much as 800 amps of current at 360 volts, which gives you that punch. That gives you the extra power you need. These particular vehicles with the impedance issue batteries would only max out at sometimes as low as 120 amps, which is actually on a normal Roadster, that's like pressing down the accelerator to about 20%.
I see. Okay.
And then we made the connection that, hey, in 2014 and 2015, Gruber Power Services had the same types of symptoms in the UPS critical power space. See, a UPS draws its power similar to punching an accelerator. Either you have no power requirement at all, or the utility shuts off and you suddenly have an inrush of demand for power. And so we get a special type of battery that has the ability to perform in those extreme circumstances. Well, the batteries that we had purchased over the course of about 9 months from our manufacturer had only been filled about halfway with the sulfuric acid electrolyte, and they ended up exhibiting exactly the same high impedance issues. So a UPS that had an advertised runtime of about 30 minutes, when there was a power inrush, they would have sometimes runtimes as little as 30 to 45 seconds before they just shut down.
Right.
The batteries would recover. They would come back. The field engineer would go out, look at the shutdown UPS, test the voltages on the batteries, and they looked fine. But in fact, they were bad.
Sure.
And so this was happening here as well.
So we ended up, and this is only the 2016 packs, by the way, the replacement pack that was initially released in 2016, and it didn't begin to manifest problems until 7 to 8 years after it was installed in the car. We immediately notified Tesla Corporate. And again, this is a testament to Tesla's interest and willingness to solve problems with Tesla Roadster. They're not ignoring them like some people feel or are not committed to them anymore. We got tremendous support. And our two engineering teams began collaborating. We began to work on this issue. And the final prognosis was there is a problem with these cells. And in the meantime, not everyone has yet experienced that has a 2016 Roadster, but as we began to publicize some of this, many other Tesla Roadster owners came out of the woodwork and said, yeah, I had noticed I don't seem to have the power I used to have. And sure enough, the common denominator typically was a 2016 replacement battery pack.
Yeah, and so it wasn't that they had not enough power to work at all. It's that they seemed to not have as much power as they used to. Those people who are easier on their cars, either in terms of the amount of mileage that they drove or in the driving style, were the ones that were seeing less degradation on the batteries.
Sure. And something else to remember, the normal battery work that we get involved in is usually cell aberrations. In other words, one cell will kill the car if it goes resistive. In this case, all the cells were behaving the same way. All of the bricks, there are 99 bricks in a Roadster, and we would go for 100% throttle call. We had the diagnostics hooked up, and we were watching and observing the current available. And it was across the board, so it looked like a yield problem. All of the batteries seemed to be failing at the same time.
Yeah, it definitely was not a single cell problem. So now to further on with that question, how has that improved over the years? Isn't it, and you can clarify because you'll know more than me, but I understand that Tesla went back to Panasonic with the 2022 R80 battery packs. And so they have a different battery and not those LG batteries in those battery packs.
Right. They no longer used LG. We did hear that it was Panasonic that they were using. And so far, the second generation R80 packs, which were released around 2020, 2021 or so, we have not begun to see this type of failure. And the expectation is because they used a different brand and a different manufacturer that we're all expecting this to not reoccur.
Absolutely, and it's very possible that even if they went back to LG and talked to them about those batteries, found out more about a destructive test where they pull apart the cell and see what electrolyte is in it or something like that. It's possible that the same manufacturer could make high quality batteries later on. That's what happened with us in the power services.
They learned what they did wrong, basically.
Yeah, basically.
The ultimate irony here is the owners that thought they were getting a longer life battery in 2016 ended up getting a battery that would not even last as long as the legacy packs, because many of the 2008 Roadsters still have their original battery packs and are going strong.
Yeah, and I know that that's caused a lot of angst among those Roadster owners that sprung for the longer range 2016 battery pack.
For those of you interested in even more detail, I know we communicated quite a bit this morning. We do have a video that deals with this issue. It announces what was going on. It also provides a lot of technical support for what we just discussed. It's out on our YouTube channel under Gruber Motors. And you can find it. It's probably called Tesla Roadster Batteries Dying or something like that. But there's some good information in that video if you want to review that. Now, the second part of Herbert's question is, what is the charging recommendation for the R80 pack over winter? Still standard mode or rather storage mode due to higher capacity? Storage mode would probably give you a bit better battery protection than using the standard mode charge. The problem with the storage mode, which wasn't anticipated at the time that they wrote that into the firmware, was the distance from a charge, which is nowhere near 80%, to being bricked is very brief and short. And we've had a number of Roadsters that got bricked because someone was on vacation for 3 weeks. It was in storage mode. A thunderstorm came through, tripped some breakers, and that car sat without a charge and eventually got bricked. We do not recommend using storage mode. The any lithium-ion battery pack deals better with a slow charge. It's kind of like barbecuing meat.
Hmm.
Slow is much better than fast and rapid. You know, you can certainly get that meat to the right temperature if you're using much higher heat. But the same with charging. Slow is better. What we recommend over winter is take your yellow charge cable. Make sure that you've replaced the GFI plug on the end. That 15 amp plug is only good for 5 years or so. And make sure that you have a dedicated circuit that it's plugged into, and just leave your Roadster plugged in continuously. It will decide when it needs a charge and not. And if your cable's in good shape, you're safe over even if you're on vacation over winter.
Yeah, that standard mode charge, if I remember right, is about 80% on Roadsters. And, IEEE and the other engineering and research organizations that have continued to do research on lithium ion cells have said that 80% is a real sweet spot for being able to keep your cells alive for a long time.
The third part of Herbert's question is approximately how many R80 packs have been delivered over the years. And the simple answer to that is on our website, grubermotors.com. We have a Tesla census program, which is fed by the Tesla Roadster owners. And you can sort on any category in that census program, and one of them is sorting on battery. If you want to see everything we've collected for the last 2.5 years or so, you can see how many R80 packs are out there, where they are, what kind of Roadsters they're in, what color, what year, all of that is available. There's a really cool sort function in that program. And again, while we're on the topic, those of you that have Roadsters that have not yet registered your Roadster, feel free to do so. There's a submission click on that census program, and you can enter your Roadster in the program. There are a number of advantages to doing that, but the primary one is we keep this census program visible to Tesla, to show them how many Roadsters are left and how many people are continuing to expect support for Roadsters. So that has enormous value.
We believe very strongly as well that the putting together this census, when did we start it? 2018, 2019?
A few years ago, yeah.
It's been a couple of years. It has done probably more to help the cooperation between Tesla and ourselves and the Roadster community than any other single thing that either we have done or that we've seen done elsewhere.
Absolutely. And of course, it's for the community. There's a lot of information there for you. If you see inaccuracies or you're listed twice or something, let us know. We're continuously improving it and updating it.
One thing that's on that list that I do want to point out, because when I first saw it, I went to Pete and said, hey, this is a problem. There are duplicate VIN numbers. Well, actually, the Roadster is a unique vehicle in that, yes, there are duplicate VIN numbers. Some of these VIN numbers are for cars that were manufactured and destined to go into the European market. Other cars that have the same VIN number ended up being manufactured and going to the North American market. I was quite stunned when I found out that that was the case.
I made a mistake last week. I had a customer in Europe, actually, that said, look, I want to buy a Roadster, but I want a 1.5 Roadster. And how can I find one? So I answered and I said, well, one of the quickest ways to tell whether it's a 1.5 is everything VIN 500 and lower was a 1.5 Roadster. And he got back to me the next day and he said, I'm seeing some in Europe here that are actually different VINs that are higher than that. And I thought, of course. There was no VIN discipline back in the day when they were making Roadsters. And there are a lot of duplications, and the rules that apply in the U.S., like everything up to 500 is 1.5, do not apply in Europe.
Yeah, so if you want a 1.5 Roadster, the easiest way I can think of is that on a 1.5 Roadster, that VDS screen is up off to the left side of the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. On a 2.0 Roadster, that VDS screen was put in a much more visible and easy to see spot over by the center console.
Mm-hmm. And then later on, Tesla improved it with the Model S and gave you 17 inches of screen, much higher, so that your chances of observing the road and the screen improved.
Yes, when they figured, they realized that people were very interested in seeing a lot the information that was there, and 3.5 inches just wasn't very big.
I think another part of the question that was asked by Herbert was, what is the production capacity currently of these R80 replacement packs? These days, it looks like they're producing about one every week or two. There are some warranty concerns at times, which of course cuts into that, eliminating the possibility of upgrading yet another car. But what we are being told is that the production capacity continues to improve. It's slow, it's gradual. It's kind of like the progress they're making in Ukraine. They're chipping away at it.
Right.
But the good news is that they are continuing to make them. They are gradually increasing production. The lead times got much shorter once they refused to accept elective battery replacements for the Roadster, because there were, again, a lot of people that had fully functioning cars that wanted to upgrade their battery pack for either more mileage or more security, that it would last longer going into the future. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Tesla put a caveat in place. We have batteries, but only for bricked cars, only for dead cars. And that has improved things quite a bit.
Yeah, I do expect at some point in time, if they continue to increase their level of production, they'll get to a point where there are not very many brick cars left, and they'll have enough batteries then to be able to start rolling out slowly to those cars that are not bricked.
Unless that coincides with the end of life, which is also hurtling towards us.
Yes, it is.
We're going on 15 years, guys, with these legacy battery packs. And, we believe that the failure symptoms on the legacy packs is going to be identical to what happened to the 2016 version packs, is that you have an impedance problem and you get all the cells failing rather than just aberrations like we're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've seen. That's what you see on other batteries, other rechargeable batteries. When you have a flashlight that has the lithium-ion batteries and they're finally gone, the flashlight pulls up. It looks like it's charged, but 2 minutes later, you have no power left, and that's exactly what we saw on the Roadsters.
I was thinking of a way to weave this into conversation here today, but this morning I was brushing my teeth, and I have one of these lithium-ion battery, Oral-B sticks, right?
Yeah.
And I keep looking at that thing, and I'm thinking, this thing has got to be over 10 years old, and it's still going strong. So this morning what happened was a piece of the rubber that covers the little light that shows when it's charging got so old that it actually peeled off, and now I've got a hole going into my, my toothbrush stick, and I know it's not going to last because you have to wet it in order to clean it.
Sure.
So I thought to myself, these lithium-ion products are remarkable. Now, it gets charged every single time. After I'm done in the morning, it goes in the charge stand, and I leave it sit there. And what is remarkable is we really don't know how long these lithium-ion, this chemistry is going to last. Like 15 years is 5 years beyond the original design expectation for the Tesla Roadster. So we're at 15 now. Does this mean we're going to go to 20 with legacy packs? No one knows yet.
Yeah, nobody knows, and that's a really great question.
I do have to go to Walmart, though, and get myself another toothbrush because now there's a hole in it,
Well, either that or, you've always got waterproof caulk.
Yeah, I could do that. All right, so Herbert continues. He says, I can estimate from your list 125 cars are currently in queue. Now, on the census program, we started the queue capability. In other words, if you wanted to get your battery replaced, you could elect, I want to go in queue option, and we were feeding this information to Tesla every month to let them know who wants a battery. And this was by their invitation, by the way. There were some people in the industry that said, oh, you don't need to do that. The Gruber's just trying to collect data, that normal naysayer stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But we were actually giving this to Tesla, and they were appreciative because they would say thank you and, all that. Now that they have restricted it to non-elective or bricked Roadsters, We're still collecting the data for them, but they are getting direct information now. And by the way, for those of you that want to communicate with Tesla directly regarding getting a battery, or if you want to go into order processing, it's Roadster Service NA for North America at Tesla.com. That's how you get your. That's one of the ways to get yourself on the list. So the queue program, it has a combination of both Roadsters that went in queue that were operational at the time, and brick Roadsters. Now, I think one of the queue options is bricked or running. We'll have to check that after this podcast.
Yeah, I think that is one of the options. And I remember one of the clearest messages we got from Tesla about how they valued that report was when we forgot to send it 1 month, and they came to us and said, hey, are you going to send us this report that you've been sending every month?
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
So we've got a YouTube question. The End of the Internet is the name that he uses on YouTube. He says, first, loud and clear.
Well, good morning, and glad to have you join us. Aussie and Vogel on LinkedIn asked the question of who needs this?
Good question. This is the Tesla Roadster podcast. There were 2,400 Roadsters built, 2,412 or something like that. So it's not one of their high production cars, but nonetheless, there are a number of owners out there. They were the first adopters. They were the people that were courageous enough to bet on a car company that was on the verge of bankruptcy a number of times. And Tesla really owes them big time because they hung in there with the company, oftentimes prepaid for a vehicle, knowing there's a risk that this company may not be around. So I think that's one of the reasons that Tesla has a special place in their heart for the Tesla Roadster owners. This is a podcast specifically designed to address the community. And according to our census program, there are about 2,000 owners out there, and a couple hundred, actually 400, that are looking for Roadsters, which is part of our free matchmaking site. We have 400 people on the pre-qualified buyer list. We also entertain some questions about other Teslas from time to time. So, but if you're finding this informative, hang in there with us. YouTube to be announced says, "Good morning, gentlemen." Well, good morning to you.
Good morning.
YouTube Highlander Apparel, one of our regular viewers, says, "Hi guys, sorry I missed yesterday's live show. Love the submarine theme though." Yeah, and for any of you that want to see any of our podcasts that have already aired, they're out on YouTube under the live section on YouTube.
Foster Henderson from YouTube also joins us this morning, and good morning, Foster. He says, Pete Gruber, hello from DC.
Welcome.
Says, Mark, I listened last week, and it's 20K miles to drive an EV to equal emissions from ICE vehicles. If you remember, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the emissions and how electric vehicles have a lot of emission up front with the carbon to manufacture the battery. However, electric gas vehicles have higher emission over their lifetime. Thank you, Foster. That 20,000 miles is good because that's one of the things that we were speculating on.
Right. He adds also, he says, "So Pete, I'd like to hear your recommendation on when to order an R80 pack for my car that charges to 230 miles with 13-year-old batteries." Well,
Wow.
You've got some really, you've got a good pack there, Foster. You know, I don't foresee Tesla ending the R80 production. I think they're successful with it. I think they're going to continue with it. And even if they do, we've got our name in the hat for continuing the production of those R80 packs. We already work not only on Tesla Roadster batteries here every day in our service center, but we also refurbish and recondition critical power batteries with Gruber Power Services. So we're well poised to take over that project should Tesla ever decide that we no longer want to do this. So there will be a continuation of these R80 packs, or maybe even something better in the future, lighter, more energy. The technology continues to improve. So I would say continue to drive your 13-year-old battery. You've got an excellent range with that car. Your CAC, of course, if you want to share that with us, that's another good barometer, how good your battery is. But so far, we're not seeing any kind of decline in the traditional legacy packs other than a very minor degradation each year in terms of range. My Tesla number 5, for example, one of the first cars built, it charges to 154 miles in standard mode, still to this day.
Yeah, and that's excellent. It's a lot of the cars that we have that come in as you're test driving them, I'll listen to the test drive reports each morning in the company meetings, and anywhere from that 155 is about as low as I've heard, up to about 175 or 180. Those are the typical ranges, and when we get one that's higher than 180, up to the 190 or 200 range, we're like, yeah, that's a really strong pack.
We have one right now. It's a 4,800 mile car. It's been here much longer than it should have, but it had a lot wrong with it. It charges to 183 miles in standard mode. The other morning I get up, I test drive all the cars, and I thought, I must have put that in range mode. Why did I do that? And I look, no, it's standard mode. 183 miles range.
Yeah, that's right. That's a really impressive pack and strong pack. So Foster may have been maybe charging in range mode to get to 230 miles.
Oh yeah, at 230 he would.
But even at that, you take off roughly 50 miles to go that 10%, or 46 miles to go that 10%. That's 184 miles in standard mode. So he's right up there with the best of the packs that we see.
Yep. So if we can pop up a picture, guys, it is the 2001 Roadster Suits 3 Transformed. Used AI here to actually enhance this image. When you, if you get a pixelated image that's too small, blurry, fuzzy, there's a software program out there that we use. It's part of AI that actually improves the image. What you're looking at here is Harvey Specter with his paralegal, Donna. And they're in a New York exotic car showroom, and guess what's front and center there? That's a 2011, Arctic white Tesla Roadster. And part of this series was that Harvey was going to drive this car around New York. A client showed up and said, I'd really like to drive it, and they did a bit of jockeying, and eventually Harvey ended up taking old school 64 I think Mustang, and the client got this 2011 Tesla Roadster. But we use this image in our thumbnail, and I find it fascinating that Hollywood is beginning to become aware of the coolness of a Tesla Roadster.
Oh, by all means, I think. And one of the things I wondered as I looked at that Roadster was, has that one been in our shop? Because I know we've had some Arctic whites with that Tesla logo across the door.
They didn't give us the VIN. That, of course, would tell us immediately if it's across our service center. But I don't watch television typically, but my wife, of course, is a television addict, and she likes these series. This is a Netflix series called Suits. It's about a law firm that always has an interesting issue that is brewing and boiling. And then, of course, like Hollywood, there's always some romance thrown in, and
of course,
a lot of drama and all that. And I'm embarrassed to admit I got hooked on this show. I'm starting to watch it.
It's all right, Pete. The same thing happened to me with Claire. She was watching it, and I was laughing at her because I was like, this is so this is,
oh, wait a minute.
We
got
over the top.
We had a cam for Richard.
That's right. We sure do now.
Oh, that's right. Richard gets his own camera.
That's right. Got this beard in full HD now.
Yeah, there we go. Looking good, yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, Pete, same exact same thing happened with me and Claire. Jesse?
Shift a little bit.
Oh, shifting. Okay. All right. Yeah, same thing happened. I was judging her for watching it, and then I found myself sitting down on the couch, and then sitting down on the couch with chips, and then laying down on the couch with chips, making comments about the show, and I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm watching it.
Yeah, pretty good themes. But, the way that I became aware of the video was through a customer. So I get this email from one of our customers, and he said, I thought you might like this. And he sent me the link to this particular series. He said it was filmed on the Netflix series Suits. And I watched the video, and then I realized I already seen this once before, and I didn't have the presence of mind to figure out where the video was. So I sent him back and I told him the same story. I said, I don't watch television. This one, though, has got me hooked for some reason. And he says, LOL. He says, the same thing happened to me. My wife was watching it, just like Richard just said. And now I'm hooked on this show as well.
Absolutely. You know, I'm much like you, Pete. I don't typically watch TV. And so whatever my wife watches is what I end up liking.
Yeah.
Real quick, guys, we got Aaron cam too.
Okay.
Let's show off Aaron's camera.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right, Aaron.
How
There
do
we
I
go.
how do I look?
You're looking pretty good with those
You look
sunglasses.
incredible. Aaron.
And we're working on getting you guys your own individual cameras, so that's coming too. We're slowly stepping up production.
Cool. We have a question from Instagram. Zakaria Gadi says or asks, is Tesla battery management systems capable to balance cells? Well, you know, that happens all the time. Actually, starting with the Roadster, it does have the ability to balance the cells in the bricks or to balance the bricks. There is a battery management board. They have resistors on it. They have sensing circuits, and it is actually able to balance itself. The next generation Tesla Model S takes it a step further. What they don't have yet, and since they use the same topology, which is a combination of parallel connected bricks and series connected bricks and sheets, is the ability to isolate to a single cell. And the reason is, in a Tesla Roadster, you have 6,831 cells. You would need a connecting point to every single one of those cells.
Right.
And a semiconductor device that senses every single one of those cells. So your battery management circuitry and boards would become way too large. So what they do in a Roadster is they collect 69 cells, 18650 cells. They connect them all in parallel, and then they call that a brick.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where the problem occurs when you get a resistive cell. If you get one resistive cell in a brick of 69 cells all that are all connected in parallel, they all look the same. So it takes very special equipment and procedures like we have perfected to isolate that one resistive cell in that collection of 69 cells. Now, the future will probably be a capability to monitor right down to cell level and semiconductor devices that can disable that cell if it gets resistive.
And I also think with the advent of the 4680 cells, there are going to be far fewer cells per battery to have to deal with
Correct.
in order to obtain the same type of voltages and powers. So you won't be talking about, you know, the 6800 plus in the Roadster. Model S does the same thing. They take, if I remember right, it's 99 batteries or something like that per brick.
Yes, it's a fewer.
And it's only 6 bricks per module and 16 modules per car. And I might be wrong on the 99 cells per brick, but it is higher than what's in the Tesla Roadster. And they're all the 18650s, so they're the smaller, thinner cells.
Same architecture, same topology, just different count. And I'm drawing a blank too on how many cells are in a brick in a in the Model S.
I know
And
that
they're
there are
fewer
96 bricks, but I don't remember how many cells are in each brick. I know it comes out to about 9,000 batteries total, so it's somewhere in that 90 to 99 range.
But the future hopefully will be individual cell monitoring, and then a lot of the issues that we're dealing with now will go away. And of course, as battery technology continues to improve, that whole architecture may go away completely anyway, and you have a gigantic pouch battery or something.
Yeah, or you end up with a smaller battery with solar or with fusion or with some other inductive charging in the road, so you don't have to have a huge battery, even possibly supercapacitors running in conjunction with the battery. Foster has a follow-up suggestion for us, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It says, I suggest you go to the wrecked car room on the TMC registry, and that's the Tesla Motor Club registry. We can clean up our Roadster census because they may have cars that are listed as wrecked there that are still listed as running on our census page.
Good point. Yeah. One of the difficulties that we face is we provide so many services to the Roadster community, including the podcasts and the free matchmaking site, and we have ads out currently. But the goal is to eventually go through the entire census program and verify the accuracy of every single one of those, which is going to be quite a project because we have 2,000 or more listed.
Right.
Every single one of those customers will need to be called. Contact information will have to be gathered, and we're chipping away at that. I would say that probably the most accurate thing we have now in the census program is the wrecked Roadsters, unless a wrecked Roadster turned up being sold on Copart or on IAA, and then got put back on the road.
Right. Tarek Tazier on Instagram asks, do you do mechanic training?
It's a common question that is asked. We just don't have the time to indulge in any kind of training at this point or developing franchise programs. We are very busy. The suggestion typically is if you want to learn how to work on these cars, at this point in time, OJT is probably the fastest way to do that. There are some college courses that are evolving, but they're going to be broad and general regarding the technology in EVs, rather than anything as specific as how to work on a Tesla, how to work on a battery pack on a Tesla, and some of these procedures that we have are proprietary to our company, so none that we're able to share yet. Question from Instagram, the Mukul Malvia asks, is there a process of reverse engineering to extract hex from microcontroller if it is locked?
So hex would be the hex code, the machine code that makes the computer run. I don't know, is the microcontroller, in this case the vehicle management system, I think is the closest thing we have to a microcontroller on a Roadster.
Well, part of our work is in black screen Linux, and we can probably go back into hex in order to extract that type of information. Most of what we do now is, at the next level, which is user type software, GUI type software that that is either stuff that we've developed or some things that you can buy in the industry as well now currently.
Yeah, the base level or in network parlance, I think we would call this level 0, is the CAN bus, where that's the communication infrastructure, everything communicates. And the first level above that is the operating system. It's Linux inside of all Teslas. That's actually common across the car industry. And then we go one level above that to the software that interfaces with those operating systems. We have utilities that we've been provided and have developed to help us deal with and diagnose issues inside the car. So whether or not something can be reverse engineered, I'm not going to say no to anything being reverse engineered, but at the same time, it's not something that we've had to dig into ourselves.
Or is it cost effective?
Right.
Got another news item. Let me grab a couple more questions here. They're coming in rapidly today. Are LFP batteries, this is from YouTube, RK, are LFP batteries, lithium iron phosphate, less likely to have these failures? I can't speak to that because we don't do work on lithium iron batteries yet. The majority of work that we're involved in is the old traditional 18650 lithium ion or 2170 cells. YouTube Core Glass says, good morning, guys. Is the Cybertruck customer deliveries imminent? Want to see you test one. That would be cool. I think Sandy Monroe's team also has one on order, and they'd love to get their hands on one as well.
I've heard that deliveries are going to start around the end of this year on the Cybertruck and will really get ramped up in 2024. At the same time, there seem to be more and more Cybertruck sightings out on the internet that we're seeing pictures from. So it does seem like the production is continuing, and I am hopeful of seeing Cybertrucks being delivered by the end of September personally.
YouTube Lightning Rod says, wow, nice shop, Gruber. Yeah, we love it. Thank you. George is with us. He says, hello, my toilet. I forgot I ate corn yesterday. Sorry I'm late. Right, George?
That's a little too much info there, George.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up the image for you guys, too, so they can see the shop for that comment that Core Glass or somebody, Lightning Rod maybe had.
It's actually our background.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up so they can see it, though, on the laptop view, so they can see a better view of it.
Oh, there we go. We're out of the way now. Yeah,
it gets us out of the way. George, He has a question for me on YouTube. He says, Mark, are the Model S bricks still going for $1,000 a brick?
Per module, he means. There are bricks in a module.
Yeah, there are 6 bricks in a Model S module. I am not privy right now as to the market rate for Model S modules.
You know, a good barometer, although risky to purchase from there, would be eBay. You know, people are they are buying these collision damaged Teslas. They're opening the packs. They're taking out the modules and using them for a variety of applications, from solar to golf carts to you know, anything that needs high current DC.
Yes. And George has a follow-up question for us as well, where he asks, how many salvage Roadsters are out there, do you think, driving on the road today?
Oh, driving on the road. That's something that we have not been tracking in our census program. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not totally sure.
Asif Bashir from YouTube says, what do you think of the Aptera car? Personally, I love it. I think it's a great design. I think it's futuristic. It's a 3-wheeler. It looks like something from the Jetsons. It incorporates some real cool technologies like solar, along with a charging method. And I think that car really epitomizes the future of EVs.
I think it's an exciting car, and I can't wait to see it come out.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a little futuristic for some people, but there are going to be people that might not like the futuristic design, but will like the price so much that they're going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Aptera is supposed to be a fairly inexpensive car, regardless of fuel type.
YouTube, George is asking, did Elon give you full access to the toolbox system for the Roadsters? The Tesla Roadster actually has a different named software tool, diagnostic tool, called Puppy Suite. And for years, we were developing our own software capabilities to work on the Roadsters. And through donations along the way, since the Roadster community recognizes that we're one of the few companies on the planet that are keeping the Roadster alive, we got some donations, the sources which we can't disclose. But there are tools available for both the Roadster and for, of course, the later version Teslas. We subscribe to Toolbox for the later model Teslas, and it's a yearly subscription that really any service organization can subscribe to.
Yes. On YouTube, Pablo Damon says, sometimes it is nice to hear Pete.
Well, thank you. Ed Prelitz is back with us. He says, possibly use basic C FILEIO to read the hex.
That's a great point. C and basic both have the low-level input-output functions that would be able to go and read the raw data off of the hard drive or other storage systems that are in these vehicles.
Very cool. And it looks like George is looking for Niles in Denmark. We haven't heard from him yet this morning. So anyway, one of the other news items is Rafael de Mastre did something in 2012 that no one else ever had. He's the guy that drove a Tesla Roadster around the world, and he's currently doing it again, and I've got some updates for you. Back then, of course, in 2012, driving around the world was completely different than it is now because there was no charging infrastructure. Let me tell you a little bit about Rafael. He is an IT consultant by trade. Born in Catalonia, Spain, grew up in Düsseldorf, Germany, and now currently lives in Romania. And he has a thriving IT business there. And he remembers seeing as a child the Citroen DS21 and really liking it, except for the smell. And he asked the adults, he says, why does it need to be so smelly? He liked the car, but he was talking about the exhaust fumes, I'm sure. He was hoping that at one point someone is going to make cars that aren't so smelly, and adults told him, no, don't worry about it. There's plenty of air. It won't be a problem. But as an adult then, he wonders what things might have been like if adults had listened to him as a child, but he decided to get a Tesla Roadster to show that all of us can stop stinking up the air quoting him, without sacrificing mobility, even on the longest and harshest routes. Well, where he went the first time was through Russia, and I'll get to that in a moment here. Let me go around. Let's talk about something else here first. He said at the time there weren't many electric cars charging. There was no DC fast charging yet either. But he said whenever there's a light burning, you can charge your car. Some electricity there, unless, of course, you have an oil lamp or a candle. The point is that there are more charging opportunities than most people realize. And so that was the first time around. He ended up carrying a collection of cables with him in the trunk of his Roadster. And we saw those because the car came to us for a refurbish and rebuild, along with Tesla changing a battery pack. And what he had was a collection of various types of electrical cords and plugs. And he said typically what he would do is try to find a circuit breaker panel, and usually kitchens and restaurants was a good place because they had a lot of high current devices there, from cooking surfaces to hot water heaters and mixers and things like that. And then he would tap into their circuit breaker panel to get a charge to continue his trip around the world. For those of you interested, there's a website. It's 80edays.com, and you can see some of his adventures there. He then in 2013 took delivery of a Tesla Model S, and he found out that there was a French team that was going to, let me minimize this so I can read a bit better. There we go. That we're going to take a 2012 Citroen C-0, and it's an electric car apparently. I had never heard of it.
I had not either.
That was going to take off from Strasbourg, France, right on the German border. We were just there 3 weeks ago, actually. And it was piloted by two French drivers, and they were going to go around the world. Well, he decided in 2012 or 2013 that he couldn't let this duo beat him. So he hastily planned a journey and set out from his native Spain in an electric car, the Tesla Roadster, hoping to overtake the French team. Well, over the next few months, the race took the two electric cars across Europe, the U.S., the Gobi Desert, Kazakhstan, the Ural Mountains, and Russia. And in September, just a few weeks before the end of the trip, Rafael managed to pass the Citroen and finish the journey around the world, being the first electric car to ever make that trip. The whole thing took 127 days. It was more than the 80 days that he had originally anticipated, and that was probably from that movie Around the World in 80 Days.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking.
Yeah, trying to meet that goal. And but then in 2016, he and 10 other team members completed a similar trip, this time with a greater variety of cars and charger support. And that trip involved one Roadster, 8 Model S's, one Denza, and one electric bus from the Hungarian company called Modulo. And this time they completed the trip in 80 days. So another trip was planned, and it was pushed back to 2024. It was actually supposed to happen in 2020, but with COVID and some of the political unrest, it wasn't until this year that he decided to start again with his Tesla Roadster. So the rest of the story is the car went to a museum in Munich, Germany, the Roadster that went around the world. He gave them very strict charging instructions. They asked for it to be there for a year. He left it there for a year, and they had such a great response. Hundreds of thousands of people showed up to see this Tesla Roadster. They asked for an extension for another 6 months, and it was during that 6 months that the Roadster got bricked and it didn't get charged properly. And that's why it ended up coming to us, to the United States, to get a battery replacement. And then at the same time, we upgraded a number of items in the car. We weatherproofed the charge port door, the HVAC controller. We completely rebuilt the power electronics module. We put a performance brake package on the car, and to prepare it for this next journey around the world. And since then, it has been going. It went back to Florida, which is where it arrived on an emission-free clipper ship. He then took it up to Nova Scotia. He went across the United States, and the car is currently in Seattle, and it's preparing for its next journey around the world. It's going to go across the ocean again. If you guys can throw up a picture we've got, you can see some of the, it's bin 507 trip. And what we'll see in the picture here is the Roadster being placed in the cargo hold of a sailboat that is unmotorized. And Rafael's goal was to get the car across the ocean emission-free. At first they said, this hold isn't big enough to hold a car. He said, well, it's not just any car. It's a Tesla Roadster. So they took some measurements and figured out that it would fit. And there it is in the cargo hold of this clipper ship. One of the downsides of traveling with a sailboat that's unmotorized is once you arrive at your destination or close to it, you may not have the correct winds to take you where you want to go. And that's exactly what happened here about 6 months ago or so when it arrived. It got stuck around Cuba. And because of unfavorable winds for 2 weeks, it was circling Cuba, trying to get enough winds to go to Miami, Florida.
We had a really interesting interview with Rafael a few weeks back, and really enjoyed that very much. More recently, while you were on vacation, Pete, Rafael stopped back in the service center here in Arizona on his way from Nova Scotia to San Diego. We talked and chatted a little bit. He said a couple things that were interesting that were changed. First, it was much harder to find KOAs, KOA campgrounds, which are a campground here in the United States, that were willing to let him charge. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that there was better charging infrastructure here in the United States than there used to be. And he continued to talk as well about like the kitchen stuff, where he would say, yeah, it's fine to go to kitchens because they're shutting down overnight. So they have not only do they have all the high voltage and high amperage available to them, they're not using it.
Right.
And so he's a great person to talk to, a lot of fun to be around. We put a couple of bright yellow stickers on his car as well, a couple of additional decals. And on 2 of the decals are QR codes so that people who are driving by him can simply pull up their phone, scan the QR code, and the 80 eDays website will come up to tell them about what this car is and why it has all of the writing and all of the different logos and basically stickers and vinyl on it.
Yeah, back in the day, Tesla, recognizing that he's a wonderful ambassador for the brand, taking a Roadster around the world, they actually threw a party for him. It was when George Blankenship was still part of Tesla. And Tesla reached out to us about 2 weeks ago or so, asked for contact information, because I think they want to do the same thing. And I don't think it's happened yet, but I think there's something planned for Rafael if he can get to Fremont, California.
I'm certainly hoping so.
We have another picture to throw up, guys. This one's called Shocks.
And while that picture's coming up, there's a question on Instagram from ASKI. It says, is it good to convert a full-wheel drive, front-wheel drive to all-wheel drive? Anything else to worry about?
We get asked questions like that often, and I think by the time you get a quote, you'll find that just buying a vehicle that you're looking for, like all-wheel drive, would be less expensive than trying to do a conversion. I don't think anyone has ever successfully proved that doing a conversion is going to be less expensive than just buying the vehicle.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you there. We also have a TikTok question from Brandon. It says, despite liking EVs yourselves, do you support government-mandated removal of gas vehicles from the market?
Well,
that's kind of a loaded question. I'll go first on this one.
All right, go for
it. My short-term answer is actually no.
Okay.
I think that, I'm an EV enthusiast. I have been fascinated by EVs and like them for years. I still remember watching some neighbor of ours in North Phoenix when I was younger, driving around their Chevrolet EV1 and wondering why it disappeared off the roads after about a year. I think that electric vehicles need to be able to stand on their own without the support. At the same time, I understand where government has a priority, they're throwing money at that priority. That is basically priming the pump for the electric vehicle industry to really be able to get it going. I'm kind of neutral toward that. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but not necessarily for that either. Long term, though, I would like to see EVs be able to either stand or fail on their own, because I think they are ultimately a superior technology and that they are able to stand on their own. And I think that the need for ICE vehicles will diminish over time once their EV reaches that tipping point of price, features, functionality, etc.
You know, my view on it is they're having observed so many government intervention blunders over the years. Getting government involved in anything usually is not the right answer. On the flip side, we have a planet that is definitely in jeopardy. I've lived here in Phoenix for 50 years, 45 years or something like that. And I've never seen a summer like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it started cool, if you remember.
It
that
did.
was the
I
other
do
thing.
remember that.
I had never seen that either. And suddenly we've got a month and a half of 110 degree plus temperatures. Something's not right. We do need to move quickly on some of this. And, emission type vehicles, fossil fuel burners, have definitely been identified as one of the causes. So, yeah, I don't recommend government intrusion, but at the same time, something needs to be done.
Yep.
All right. So, I've got something here for you. What I'm going to hold up here is, and if we can get that picture back up, guys. This is a Tesla Roadster shock. This is the front portion of the shock. There's a gas canister here filled with nitrogen gas, which prevents cavitation or foaming inside the shock. But to make a long story short here, the Tesla Roadsters now are going on 15 years. And there isn't a Roadster out there that I've driven, and I drive at least 3 a week, test driving them, that doesn't jar your bones as you're going, across the roads that I'm familiar with, that I drive every single day. And the fundamental reason is shocks have been unavailable for a long time. The original Bilstein shocks were quite suitable for the Roadster, but because of the small production run, 2,412 or something, eventually they stopped making them for the Roadster. We actually ended up going back to Bilstein. We found out that everyone that worked there at the time that knew anything about the specs for these Tesla Roadster shocks are gone. And then we found a gentleman that had retired, and we're able to contact him. And he said, there are some spec drawings somewhere. I'm going to see if I can find them. And months went by, and nothing was produced. We went to many other shock manufacturers. We went to Penske. We went to Olin. We went to Monroe. And none of them really were able to meet our price point and, of course, the quantities that we needed. And I'm happy to report that we finally have an equitable solution. These are custom-made shocks, and whenever you put the word custom in front of anything, it gets highly expensive. Mm-hmm. You put marine in front of anything, and it gets expensive.
Oh yes,
things for boats, right? So what we finally have is a shock set that is middle of the road. It is fully adjustable, so you can dial in how stiff you want it. You want it smooth. You want to track your car. And it is a very high quality shock. That was the other thing that was of great interest to us. It is CNC machined and just extraordinarily high quality shock. It's also made by a company that's been around for 50 years. That's something else that was important to us, because so many of these Tesla Roadster parts vendors were here today, gone tomorrow, because Tesla really couldn't attract the large vendors at the time, only buying 2,000 of something. So we're happy to report these are in stock. You can see them on our e-store. There's some more pictures that show the product you get with it. There's a tool that comes with it. There's some clamps that come with it. And we have finally solved the Tesla Roadster shock problem, for us at least.
Yeah, at least for us. And we've had our first car with the shocks installed. They're performing great. But I have to admit, Pete, I had never heard of the gas/hydraulic shock combo before. Learning about the in-track shocks, so I did a little bit of research, like I like to. So I took a little bit of time to look it up, and I found that the gas-charged shock absorbers that are so common in the automotive industry, they are good for your run-of-the-mill standard shock absorption. They have really fast response, but they do tend to wear out over time fairly quickly. And they tend to underperform in high performance applications. They just don't have the beef as it is to be able to handle high performance driving, fast driving, or
tracking your car,
tracking,
yeah, sure.
or rough, rough or off road applications. The oil shocks are superior for that, but again, the oil shocks tend to be a little stiffer. And in a high performance or tracking type of environment, the oil cannot respond quickly enough to the vibrations. And so the oil shocks end up simply transferring a lot of the roughness of the road right up into the frame of the car. That's where these, which are kind of, I would call these almost like a hybrid. They're a gas oil hybrid. That canister that you showed is filled with high pressure nitrogen gas, and that gives you the benefit of the gas shocks. The oil, because they are a hydraulic shock, that gives you the benefit and the advantage of the hydraulic shocks. You get both of the advantages, and none of the real drawbacks. This shock has existed in this form actually since the mid 1950s. Dr. Christian de Carbon in France built it. The carbon shock was bought out in the 1980s by Delphi. So Delphi makes a shock similar to this. And they're used in typically high performance applications and most typically on motorcycles.
Exactly.
Either for racing bikes, whether it's track racing bikes or off-road. Not used as often in cars, except for some of the highest end cars. They are a perfect fit for what we need for a Roadster.
And that's what we discovered as well doing this research for many months, is that the motorcycle shocks tend to be higher quality than your automotive shocks.
Yeah.
So I drive a different Roadster 3 times a week, and very in tune with the idiosyncrasies of the cars, how they handle the various roads. And since I drive the same way every single day for 50 years now, I'm very familiar with the road conditions. I know where these splits are. I know where the transition from asphalt to concrete is, the freeway access, all of that. And I'm pleased to report that the initial findings with a middle of the road setting with our new set of shocks dramatically improves the performance of these cars. The handling, the amount of bump steer, the tracking, the level feel when you're driving, how smooth it is but yet responsive. Very impressed with these shocks. And I'm sure our customers will be too. They are available on our e-store, and I think they're just under $3,000 for a set, and they are available for you to purchase. Looks like George is back with us. He says, I got to ask, with the Roadsters, are the Lotus body parts still available, or are they becoming scarce? Well, the first thing that we need to communicate there, George, is only 7% of the Tesla Roadster is still Lotus Elise. Number of reasons for that. All the body panels had to be changed. The frame was changed to accommodate the 1,000-pound battery pack. The 7% portions are limited to some of the suspension things like control arms, for example. So Lotus is not a resource for us in the Roadster world in terms of parts. So the challenge has been for a company like us is to either recreate vendors, recreate parts, which we also do, like 3D printing. and or try to reactivate old vendors and convince them that to sell a small quantity product. You know, production runs are typically in the tens or hundreds of thousands. Nobody is going to give you a great price if you're trying to buy 50 of something, especially if they have to recreate it.
Another question from George. It says, who besides Mr. Pete is the main head mechanic in charge of the barn find Roadsters?
Well, the Barn Find Roadsters was part of our free matchmaking site where people realize that they can sell their Roadster and have a large audience that is viewing our site for what's for sale. And it's also free, completely free. The head mechanic, I don't pretend to know everything over at Gruber Motor Company. We have a combination of skills that are very effective and very experienced, such as we have electrical engineers that do the reverse engineering on the circuit boards, that do the chip chasing, that troubleshoot down a component level. We also have master mechanics. Yesterday, for example, I got an education on the shocks and how they would be inserted into our cars and some of the conditions and you know, the things that go along with an installation of a shock and how it affects other portions in the suspension. And then general mechanics. We have software people involved. Mark is on that software team as well. That's so right. It really takes a combination of skills, none of which is inherent in one individual. So I'm always a bit leery when I hear, well, I do this and I do that and I'm responsible for this.
Yeah, we're small enough that the best answer for this is everybody has to be responsible for everything at all times.
Right.
And true. That means that you've got, you know, we've got, well, I will name a couple names. We've got Scotty in there rebuilding PEMs. He's the PEM master. He is the PEM expert. He's not the only one that rebuilds PEMs. He'll come out and help work on the batteries. We'll have Adrian and Brian out there doing battery pulls and a lot of mechanical work. Nick will be out there working on software. And there are several other people there as well who are, and they're all cross-training. They're learning from one another. And so I don't know that we have a head mechanic per se. We do have a group of people that are responsible for taking care of the customer, and everyone takes great pride and ownership in what they do.
Very much so. And then, of course, you have to have that conductor, just like a symphony orchestra.
Oh, yes.
It ties it all together. But yeah, it is a very symbiotic collection of skills that we have there. I counted 15 people this morning in that meeting, by the way. So it is growing, and
that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. All right, another question. It looks like
it's again from George.
About ice removal question. I hope the ice vehicles will be grandfathered in our future, like the brick cell phone. Yeah. Well, you know, a number of countries and states have mandated that by the year 2035, they will no longer allow ICE vehicle production or sales, not used sales, but new sales, of course. And of course, as things begin to continue to deteriorate with the planet, those kind of deadlines may actually become more aggressive.
They really might. The state of California has been a leader in the United States in environmental issues. It's much to the praise and or chagrin, depending on your political views of people. But the fact still remains that there are 16 states, including many of the larger population states in the U.S., that have in their legislative code that they're going to follow California's lead when it comes to these type of issues. So when California mandated that they're going to have no more car sales of ICE vehicles past 2035, then many of those 16 states simply nodded their head, and that means that there are like 17 states in the United States now that are going to ban the sale of ICE vehicles after 2035 because they're all saying just me too.
You know, we got a call yesterday from a Tesla service center, and there is a Tesla Roadster that was recently bricked, but the issue is that the DC voltage level was out of tolerance with the recovery charger that they had. And Tesla is back to doing recoveries now, meaning that if your Roadster is a short-term brick, they have equipment that we actually rebuilt a couple of 3 years ago or so for them that will allow them to basically recover this car and get it running again. But the firmware and the parameters for safety reasons in this charging, recovery charging method is very specific, and it won't touch anything under 200 volts DC string voltage. So they call us and they realize that we're able to recover Roadsters down to even 27 volts string voltage, depending on the timelines. And the car is currently on its way to the GMC service center. But it took about a day for us to line up transport, get it all coordinated. And I got to tell you, the feedback from Tesla was, thanks for the incredibly prompt service. To our people over there, that is just music to their ears, because we try really hard to provide these levels of customer service. And when you get feedback like this from the world's largest tech company, from Tesla, that is just highly rewarding.
Well, it speaks to the quality of our team. A couple people we didn't mention before, Miranda and Victor, that do. Miranda would be the one who would have arranged the transport, and Victor is that conductor you were talking about. They're just so good at their jobs.
If you have a resistive cell Roadster, and what the symptom there is going to be is your charge, each time you charge your Roadster, it's going to reduce the finished range. So if you were charging to 158 miles, suddenly it's 145, and then 130 every time you charge, depending on how bad that resistive cell is. Time is not on your side. At that point in time, you are heading toward a situation where a brick is going to get below 2 volts. And when it does, it is going to damage the other 68 cells in that brick. And if it does, you're going to need a sheet. And battery sheets are not being sold by Tesla. The only source for those is collision damage cars. And those are also very rare. Look at the auctions.
Right.
And if you do find a collision damaged Roadster for sale at auction, it's probably been in title jail for 6 months with a service plug-in, with no charge, and all those sheets are shot. So our advice to you is, if you have a resistive cell and you're seeing declining range, do not let the rest of those cells die to the point where you're going to need a sheet replacement. Our recovery success, if the car gets here quickly, is 98% plus. So don't waste time waiting or sending it to the wrong shop. We will have that car back on the road. And oftentimes we're able to do that if it's a short-term brick within the first week or two. But it has to get here quickly, and you can't waste too much time.
Yeah, I remember the customer we had in Florida that had one of the most extreme losses that we had seen. She was losing close to 12 miles a day on her charge, but she got her car right to us, and it was actually a very simple thing for us, and in that particular case, to identify which sheet had the bad brick and the bad cell, correct the issue, and get her car back on the road.
If you guys can throw up a picture, it's called resistive cell. We actually have that very car and that symptom, and I can show you what we just discussed. By the way, that car from Florida was losing range so rapidly, we knew that by the time it got here, it was going to be bricked.
Mm-hmm.
They actually drove it on a transporter,
Yes.
And then by
Yes.
the time it got here, we had to use, we took it off with a forklift. But if you take a look at all those blue lines, there are 99 of them. Each one of those is a brick of around 4 volts DC. And you can tell in about the, let's see if I can see it. The sheets are actually listed in a slight gray line there, and there will be 11 sheets. And if you go to the right there, it's like sheet 4 or 5, has one brick that is showing below 2 volts. There we are.
It looks like it was brick 9 on sheet 3.
Sheet 3, okay. This is the type of software we use that will allow us to determine what's going on in the car. If you send us a log file If your car is beginning to have symptoms like this, we're also able to extract this type of information and tell you exactly what's going on in the car, which sheet it is and which brick is having a problem, and what the voltage levels are, and what the rate of decline is. But again, time's not on your side. Get that car to us as quick as you can, and we'll put it back on the road in short order. YouTube, Slarty Bart Farst says, government subsidies, oil, billions of dollars a year, no EV credits, no oil credits. Deal.
I could take that deal.
All right.
I think so. George on YouTube says, wow, he says, Mark did his shock homework. Thank you, sir, for that info. You're welcome. I take great pride in being prepared, actually.
I have another picture I want to throw up here, guys, and it's called connectors. And here we get into the realm of what kind of work takes place at Gruber Motor Company behind the scenes that no one's getting paid for, that is development work and that's volunteer, that supports the community. And there's an enormous amount of that type of work that takes place. What you're looking at here is one page of many, where just one item, we are tracking connectors in a Tesla Roadster. And what we have here is links to spec sheets, links to sources, so that when we need a part for the Tesla Roadster, we know exactly where to go, and a variety of sources many times. The development of this kind of data and these kinds of tools, of course, is all volunteer work. No one's paying us to do this type of work and to invest this type of energy.
Ed says, I recommend supplying a suggested setup sheet with the shocks whenever they're sold to customers. Many individuals that purchase and self-install adjustable coil overs find that the initial setup can be frustrating. A suggested setup sheet would include alignment specs and coilover adjustments for the initial install.
Ed, we're a step ahead of you. There's actually 2 laminated tutorial sheets that go out with every shock, and that kind of information is buried in there.
Yeah, and I know that we're also going to take the time to put these shocks onto one of our test cars because we have a couple of Roadsters that we have kept aside, a 1.5 and a 2.0, as test mules, and it's specifically for stuff like this, where Pete is going to go and talk to the mechanics in the back and say, okay, put them to the maximum setting. Give me a really firm ride. You know, he'll go and test drive for a few days, give feedback, and then we'll dial them back and we'll see what the different feels are for each type of setting, jot it down, and then we can ask people a little bit more of, hey, how do you prefer your ride? And then we make adjustments accordingly.
You know, we're running on an hour and a half here. We have more agenda items, but we'll bring those over into the next Roadster podcast Wednesday. But it looks like Niles just showed up. And from Denmark, he says, just dropped in. Why not? Right with the motorcycle shocks. I recently got 2 YSS gas oil ones on a BMW R100. They are good quality too and adjustable in 3 ways.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you for Niles for dropping in and telling us about that. Behaven on TikTok also says, we have a 10th Amendment. It says mandates like that are illegal. So getting into the political spectrum and the different mandates that have gone in places like California.
Right. And then, okay, Niles asks again from YouTube. He says, how come so many Roadsters in your shop? Are they dead on arrival or waiting to be revived? It does look busy. Well, the Roadsters that you see in that picture are just a portion of the Roadsters that we have here. We have another commercial building that also houses some of the Roadsters. And it's really a combination of things. The ones on the left side there in the picture behind me, and I'll get out of the way there, yeah. Those are cars that are waiting to go back to the owners at this point. They're completed or in some form of disposition like that. The ones up on the lift, of course, are being actively worked on, and we have 11 lifts. The ones on the right are waiting for lift time. And then there's some in the back that you can't quite see there. There's some parts Roadsters there and some other ones that are waiting to be worked on. And then there's the tire section and the shock section and suspension section. And that's behind Mark toward the rear there. We have a number of projects that are continuously or work in process, as we would call it. And there are Roadsters coming in all the time. There's one scheduled to come in today, for example, and it's VIN number 18. That's a Signature 100 Roadster, very low VIN. And there's another one going out. I think it's already left today. But yes, it's a very busy shop, and we've got good turnover, and things are getting repaired and going back to owners.
You know, George had responded to Niles and said maybe there's free storage out of the 118-degree Arizona heat.
Well,
there are a few Roadsters in there are actually long-term storage Roadsters.
Well, let me talk about that for just a moment here. Any Roadster that we have remains indoors, under cover, out of the sun, and out of the rain. Roadsters are not waterproof. And in a secure building with 24/7 security and online monitoring, cameras everywhere. These are very valuable cars, not only to the owners, but to the community. So we take extra care to make sure that nothing ever sits outside or in the street, heaven forbid.
Yes. Now, I know we have several questions left, but I think what we'll do at this point is start wrapping up. And we'll get to these questions. We love having you keep them coming. And we'll get those on next Wednesday at our next Roadster podcast. The very first question that we had today, I think, was actually either a holdover or a question that had come in prior to the start of the podcast. And so we will get them on the list. We'll answer them. We love getting them.
By the way, quick update on the Chinese Roadsters. Everybody usually asks, but we didn't hear it this time. We're wrapping up, Jesse.
Yeah, we're having issues with the video. We need to wrap it up.
Okay. They will be here. They're coming in the 26th of this month, providing that Customs is happy with everything. So stay tuned. We'll have a lot more information, and we'll see you tomorrow then at the Thursday EV broadcast.
Take care.